In the event we don't have enough, you may have to share.
Say a few words, and so does Carol Reynolds, who I don't know if she's here. And so let's do the usual thing.
Yeah, we'll come down.
I'll come down.
Yeah. Good evening, friends. Thank you all for being here. Before we actually begin the service, we're going to set the tone for the evening by singing Hine Ma Tov. So if you'll join Rabbi Rosenbaum and me, Hine Ma Tov. Hine Ma Tov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Please rise for the Baruch Hu, page 26.
Urachum v'yichaper avon v'lo yashkif v'hirba l'shiva po v'lo ya'ir kol chamato Adonai Hoshia hamelech yaneinu v'yom koreinu. Baruch Hu et Adonai hamevorach. Baruch Adonai hamevorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch Adonai hamevorach le'olam va'ed.
Please be seated.
El Chai v'Kayam, Tamid Yimloch Aleinu Yolam Va'ed, Baruch Atah Adonai Hamari Baravi.
Amen. We read together on the top of page 29. With everlasting love, you have loved your people, the house of Israel, teaching us the Torah and its mitzvot, instructing us in its laws and judgments. Therefore, O Lord our God, when we lie down and when we rise up, we shall speak of your commandments and rejoice in your Torah and mitzvot, for they are our life and the length of our days. On them we will meditate day and night. May your love never depart from us. Praised are you, O Lord, who loves your people Israel.
יברך אל תשימנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב עמו ישראל.
Amen.
שמע ישראל
Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
ואהבת
את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבבך, ושיננתם בבניך, ודיברת בם, ושבתך בביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך ובקומך, ובקשרתם להיות על ידך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך, ובשעריך. והיה
אשר אנוכי מצווכם היום יעבר. אל תדאגנך רגלך. Please join me on page 34, 4 lines from the bottom of the page. Leman tizkuru vasitem et kol mitzvotai, vitem kedoshim leElohechem, ani Adonai Elohechem, asher hotzeti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim, liot lachem leElohim, ani Adonai Elohechem, Adonai Elohechem, amen.
We read responsively on 37. True and certain it is that there is one God, and there is none like the Lord.
From the might of tyrants and delivered us from slavery to freedom.
Great are the things that God has done. God's wonders are without number.
God brought forth Israel from Egyptian bondage and has brought in our hope in every generation.
May you continue your protecting care over Israel, O Lord, and guard all your children from disaster.
Children of Israel beheld your might. They gave thanks to you and praised your name.
They accepted your sovereignty willingly and sang in joyous thanksgiving.
Moses and the children of Israel proclaimed in great exultation.
Who is like you, O Lord, among the mighty? Who is like you, glorious in holiness, revered in praises, doing wonders?
You rescued Israel at the sea. Your children beheld your power.
This is my God, they exclaimed and said. The Lord shall reign forever and ever.
As you delivered Israel from a mightier power, so may you redeem all your children from oppression.
Praise are you, O Lord, Redeemer of Israel.
Malchuto b'ratzon kiblu alehem Moshe u'bnei Yisrael lechavnu shira b'simcha rabba v'yamru kulam mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai mi chamocha nedar b'kodesh norati lot osef elem Malchutcha robanecha bokeh yam lifnei Moshe ze'eli anu v'yamru
Adonai imloch leolam vaed.
ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגאלו מהחזק ממנו ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל.
Amen. Hashkivenu, page 38. Hashkivenu, Adonai. Shmor tzeitzenu.
שמור צאתנו ובואנו לחיים ולשלום מעתה ועד עולם. ברוך אתה אדוני שומר עמו ישראל.
Amen. Page 40. Baruch
כי המלכות שלך היא ולעמד תמלוך בכבוד כי אין לנו מלך אלא אתה ברוך אתה אדוני המלך בכבודו תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד ועל כל מעשיו.
And we rise for Chatzi Kaddish, page 44.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, בעלמא דברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחיי חון ופמיכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בעגלה בזמן קריב יאמרו אמן.
אמן יהי שמי רבה מברך לעולם ולעולמי עלמיה.
לעולמי עלמיה, יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר, יתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר, ויתלבט על שמי דקודשה בריחו. ויהי לה מכל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, Damiran bialma v'imru. Amen.
Amen. We continue with the Silent Amidah, beginning on page 46.
Page 56. Join in, we can be seated and we'll join in singing Shalom Rav. 56 in the middle of the page. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Ki atahu melech adon lechol hashalom. Ki atahu melech adon lechol hashalom. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. V'tov b'einecha levarech et amcha Yisrael b'chol עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. Shalom Rav al Yisrael amcha tasim leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael amcha tasim leolam.
Tasim leolam. Please rise for Kaddish Shalem, page 60.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, בעלמא דברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחיי חון ובימי חון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בעגלה בזמן קריב יאמרו אמן.
אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך, לעולם לעולמי עלמיה, יתברך.
יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר, ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר, ויתלבט על שמי דקודשה. בריחו לעילא מכל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דמירן בעלמא ויאמרו אמן. יקבל שפתון ובותון לכל ישראל, קודם אבהון דבשמיא ויאמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה בן שמעיה בחיים, עלינו ועל כל ישראל ויאמרו אמן. עושה שלום
במרומיו. הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. ואמרו אמן. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל.
יאמרו אמן, אמן.
Aleinu, page 62.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי ארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם. ואנחנו הורים ומשפחתנו מודים לפני מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטה שמיים מיוסד הארץ, ומשה יקרו השמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגבהי מרומים. הוא אלוהינו אין עוד, אמת מלכנו אפס זולתו, כך כתוב בתורתו. וידעת היום והושבות אל לבביך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ מתחת. אין עוד, על כן נקווה לך אדוני אלוהים. כי המלכות שלך היא, ולעולמי תמלוך בכבוד, ככתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד.
ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד. Please be seated. Rabbi Rosenbaum is going to lead us in a musical rendition of the 23rd Psalm, which you'll find on page 134.
134. It's also on page 77.
Or on 77, whichever one you prefer.
It's a little closer. From the beginning. Mizmor leDavid, Adonai roi lo echsar, binot sheyar bitzeni, al mei menufot yinaleini. Nafshi yishovev, Yancheni b'magle tzedek leman shemo, gam ki elech v'geit salmavet, lo irara ki ata imadi. Shiftecha umishantecha Hema yenachamuni Taroch lefanai shul לפני שולחן נגד צורריי. דישנתי בשמן ראשי, דישנת בשמן ראשי, דישנת בשמן ראשי, כוסי רוויה. אך טוב החסד ירדפו לי כל ימי חיי, ושבתי בבית אדוני, ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים. לה 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 לה
Mourner's Kaddish, page 68. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei rabbah, v'yalma divra kirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon uv'yomechon v'chaye b'chol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uv'zman kariv v'yimru amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mevarach le'olam u'lamei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh. Yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei d'kudisha b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran bi'alma v'yimru amen.
Amen.
Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. We read responsively on page 73. As a deer cries out for streams of water, so my soul cries for you, O God.
My soul thirsts for the living God. Oh, when may I feel God's presence?
Tears have been my food day and night. I am ever taunted with, where is your God?
Pour out my soul within me when I recall our festive procession to the house of God with joyous song and thanksgiving.
Why are you downcast, O my soul? Why the turmoil? I still hope in the Lord. I shall yet offer praise for God's deliverance.
My soul downcast, I seek to recall God's miracles at water's edge and at mountain's top.
May the Lord ordain divine kindness by day, that by night I may chant to the God of my life.
My rock, I cry, why have you forgotten me? Why must I go mourning and oppressed?
Evil adversaries taunt me, crush me, saying all day long, where is your God?
Why are you downcast, O my soul? I still hope in the Lord. I shall yet praise the God of my deliverance. Tishtochachi nafshi umatehemi alai chochili l'Elohim ki od odenu yeshuot panai velohai.
Mourner's Kaddish, page 78. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei rabbah, v'yalma divra kirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon uv'yomechon v'chaye d'chol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uv'zman kariv v'yimru amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mevarach le'olam u'lamei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei d'kudisha b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran bi'alma v'yimru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Before sharing just a few words of Devar Torah, I wanted to thank Rabbi Danny Weiner, who was here this evening. Last night, Rabbi Jim Morrell was here. His presence, your presence, are very, very deeply heartfelt. I think it's a testament to our community, the very special one we have here in Seattle. We're a big community, but we're also a small community. And to have Rabbanim from other congregations come and offer words of comfort. I know how busy Rabbi Wiener is, but it's just so thoughtful and so sweet that you are here. I know it means the world to Sandy and her family. Thank you. So the common theme, I think, has been music. I don't know why. Rabbi Rosenbaum spoke so beautifully last night about Psalm and how Cantor Kurland, how Brad exemplified the real meaning or underlying meaning of that psalm. And tonight I wanted to share just a few words that come from the Midrash that speak about the power of music in Jewish life. And in the Beit Midrash, the study hall, but also here in the Beit Tfilah, the house of worship. Va'amar Rabbi Shvatia, Amar Rav Yochanan, Kol hakoreh belo ne'ima, v'shoneh belo zimra, alav hakatuv omer, v'gam ani natati lahem chukim lo tovim. And Rabbi Shvatia said that Rabbi Yochanan said, concerning anyone who reads from the Torah without a melody or studies the Mishnah without a song, the verse says, from Ezekiel, so too I gave them statutes that were not good and judgments whereby they should not live. As one who studies Torah through song demonstrates that they are fond of their learning, furthermore, the tune helps him remember what he has learned. It's such a beautiful teaching. You may be familiar with the phenomenon in the yeshiva, in the study hall, where there's not only arguing going on over a daf or a page of Gemara or the Talmud, but the argumentation and the studying of the text is done with what we call a lot of shuckling, right? A lot of body movement. And the recitation of the text isn't read, it's done in a sing-songy way. It's as if the Talmud is being sung. And that's because of texts like this one. That yes, you can read a rabbinic text and read it like you would read a page from a book. But just like we don't simply read the Torah, we sing the Torah. We also sing the classic core texts of our tradition. Because when we sing, we're inspired. When we sing, we're moved. And the added bonus, as the text says, when we sing, it's almost like we're given a mnemonic device. The singing enables us to remember better what we have learned. I know about you, but when I learn a song, I actually know the words of that song a lot better than when I read a page from a book and then I try to recite those words from memory. Singing has this really remarkable, deep, impactful impact on us. And nobody better exemplified this idea, Sandy, Akiva, Talia, Noam, than your husband and your father. He really understood the power of music in a way that I think some chazanim or cantors may not. And he understood that his role wasn't to perform, it was to engage, to get people to join in. And I will tell you, sometimes it would drive me kind of nuts, because I think, as Rabbi Rosenbaum either said in his beautiful hesped, his eulogy, or when he was teaching, Brad would end up being all over the place. He was like
the Talmud recounts how when Rabbi Akiva would daven, he would start in one corner of the room and he would end up on the other corner of the room because he just shuckled his way over. He was so taken with what he was praying. And Brad, he'd start out there, but then all of a sudden, I'd see Brad over here, and I'm thinking to myself, I hope the people who are watching online can hear him because he's here. But then I'd look out and I'd see how every one of you would be so connected with him. And he would do a lot of this, right? He would urge you to join in. He didn't want to be a singer. He didn't want to perform. He wanted all of you to sing with him. And he had the kind of voice, it was a pleasant voice, which every cantor should have. It was a pleasant voice that you could sing with. It wasn't operatic. It was beautiful. And not only the voice, but the heart behind the words and the singing were beautiful. I don't usually do gematria, but there's a really interesting gematria. The word shira, which means song, if you add up the numerical value of the letters of that word, the total comes to 515. If you add up the numerical value of the letters that make up the word tefillah, prayer, guess what number you get? 515. What a coincidence that song and prayer would have the same numerical value. So, in his spirit, because he's not going to be here with us anymore, we have to remember that song and prayer go hand in hand. And we just have to imagine him urging us on with a wave of the hand and the beautiful spirit that he encouraged us to sing along with him with. And he will be with us in this sanctuary every time we gather to pray. Tzor b'tzor chaim. May he be bound up in the bonds of everlasting life, and let us all say, Amen. So, as we did last night, we're going to take time to have people share recollections, stories, thoughts, and we'll ask those of you who would like to do that to please come down here, if you can form a line or sit on the steps. And we'll do some sharing.
I actually hate...
And if you could identify who you are, share a name, and then share your words.
I'm Barbara Shear. I don't like getting up in front of people. I do my best talking out there when I'm supposed to be quiet. We all have a gazillion stories. I thought I'd talk about our choir days. I remember the first time Bradlee came to choir rehearsal. I think I'm the only person that calls him Bradlee. He never corrected me. I don't know why. I started calling him that, but he didn't care. But he came to choir rehearsal, and we used to have a pretty good-sized choir, and we were pretty good. And David Shear directed for 30 years, so David's out front, and Bradlee was next to him and slightly back. So we start with the first song, whatever it was, and we're watching David, and then Bradlee's off to the side doing this. And he's the cantor, right? The cantor's here, and we should be watching the cantor. And David's he's left-handed. But Bradlee's doing this, and we're going, the whole thing fell apart. And David's going, what are you doing? Well, the cantor's directing. And he says, well, the cantor wasn't directing. The cantor was rock to the music because he was just rocking along. So that's one story. And then Florence Katz-Burstein last night was reminding me that the cantorial conference was every summer. What, like June or July or something? May? Okay. very happy Mother's Day. But he would come back, and we were already in rehearsal, and he would come back with this pile of music, and he'd be so excited. He goes, we have all this new music, and you're just going to love all this new music. And we're going, huh? And he'd say, this is beautiful news. And he'd have like 7 new songs, and you can do it. You guys are good. We can learn all this music. We're going. So the first couple of years, oh, sure, we can. And we still were just getting to know him. About the 4th or 5th year, we were going, no. And then he said, okay, we just have 3 songs, and they're not very big. Really? Well, 2 of them were not very big, and 1 of them was really big. And then after that, we said, 1 new song. And the last one is Herb Weisbaum was talking about his mother-in-law's, Bradlee went in to sing to Deb's mom. My father was also Sephardic. He moved from Richland to the Summit after my mom died, and he was in the hospital. I called the office. It was a Friday morning. Rabbi Rosenbaum went in. Cantor went in. So I'm there at 10:30 in the morning. The 2 of them come in. It's Friday morning. I go, what are you guys doing here? And I thought they'd come Sunday. They were there. Chatted for a couple minutes. Rabbi left. He must have had other people to visit. And Cantor looked at my dad and said, would you like me to sing Ladino's song? I can't remember what it was. And his face lit up. And he sang. So the door of the room was open. I became aware of the fact the noise in the hallway slowly stopped. There were no steps. There were no carts. There were no voices. It became completely silent. So not only was he singing to my dad, but he sang to the entire hallway. And when he finished singing, those sweet voice and those notes were still hanging in the air.
My name's Ephraim Krischer. I understand last night a number of members talked about their relationship with the Chazan over certain prayers, and I had 2. One was on the high holidays, the Al Chait, and then we would, between the paragraphs, the Al, Kulam, and I always asked him to do do it twice, and he would sneak a second one in on one of the, and then he would look for me and give me the nod. And also every Rosh Chodesh, the Shabbat before Rosh Chodesh, where I asked him one time, could you change the melody to Chaverim Kol Yisrael from whatever he was using? And he did. And then every time we bench Rosh Chodesh, he would look for me and give me the eye. And I would appreciate that. And then lastly, the Chazan was a dedicated accordion player. And that takes a lot of courage. And I don't know if this is the story I heard. I don't know if it's true or if it's urban legend. But the Chazan would he'd go to the Summit or go to the Klein and give concerts. And he'd always lock the accordion when he was finished in the trunk. And one time he forgot, and he put it in the back seat, and he had to make a stop to pick something up at a store, and he ran in, and when he came out, he saw there was broken glass all over the sidewalk by the back seat. And he rushed over, and there were 2 accordions on the back seat.
So my name is Carol Reynolds, and I was the Cantor's assistant for 18 years, and I did my best to keep him organized. I was told many times, don't print out his calendar. He needs to listen to his own voicemail, and he needs to read his email. But I did it anyway. Not all the time, but I do it anyway, even though well, whatever. So the Cantor and I had history before I began working here. I suspect we sort of knew who each other were when my kids were at the day school, and I think Akiva was a kindergartner. So that, and then during the B'nai Mitzvah years, we were often at Herzl-Ner Tamid because my kids had friends who were Herzl members and they were having their B'nai Mitzvah, so we were here many times as much as we were at Beth Shalom where we belonged. So when I came in to interview for the job, I first interviewed with Rabbi Gelber, and then I went downstairs to meet face-to-face with Cantor, and I look in the door, and he looks at me, and he goes, "I know you." And that was the beginning of what I guess one could call a working relationship. We, every morning, Cantor would always check in with me. I mean, I'm sure there were times that he didn't, but he was pretty consistent. When people couldn't get a hold of Cantor, I would call him, and he would always answer the phone. And he was just a great guy. I think that there's many things that, you know, he wasn't the most organized person. That's what kept me employed. And I mean, what more can I say? I was in Miami when I happened to be up really late at night, looking at social media when I shouldn't be, and I ran across Sandy's email about Cantor's passing about 10 minutes after she posted it. And for a couple days, I kept thinking, why am I not crying? I mean, he was really a good friend. And we talked about so many things, family, relationships, working with B'nai Mitzvah students, losing a spouse. I mean, I'd lived a number of adventures, and I was his assistant when his dad passed away, when his mom passed away, and he was with me, as was Rabbi Rosenbaum, when my parents passed away, and then my kids got married, and I was still working here when the first grandchild was born. And I'm gonna really, really miss him. With COVID, after I retired, nobody saw anybody. And I don't know what to say. I mean, Cantor's birthday is June 11th. And I would always give him Hershey's or Dove chocolate. And you know, we have plans of when we're going to see somebody, and we don't see them again, and it's heartbreaking. But I learned the hard way decades ago that what you have to remember, and Cantor exuded this, is that in the end, really all that matters is love. And he exuded that. He made my mom and Rabbi Rosenbaum and Janine and Sandy make my mom feel really important at the Klein Gallon. She once said, "I feel like I'm famous because the rabbi and the Cantor know me." And they made her feel special, and that love carries on and on and on. And all those times that I printed out that dang calendar, and then Cantor would say, "What's my schedule?" And I'd say, "Read your calendar," but then I'd pull it up and read it for him. Especially now, I don't regret any of it, and I'm gonna really miss him. But just remember his love and that he gave to people, and that's what surrounds you guys.
We'll carry on the theme here. I took off my mask because Cantor Kurland was not a mask fan, I can tell you. So my name is Nadine Strauss. I had the honor of working with Cantor Kurland for 33 plus years of his tenure here. And apologies for the paper, but it's a little surreal to be up here in this moment. And thank you for your patience in that. And though we were both employed to serve the congregation, we of course had very, very different roles. He was part of the clergy team that supported our congregants in all the pivotal moments. All of those pictures that have been posted and all those heartfelt words that have been shared document how important he was to this congregation. He taught us, he smiled for us, he sang and he chanted with us, and he encouraged us, and he was present in all the ways that mattered. Do any of you remember how he answered his cell phone? Come on. Talk to me. Seriously, right? And in recent days, did he do it to y'all? Okay. In recent days, that refrain has haunted me. And in my thoughts, it went over and over again because I believe that he really meant it. He was not the kind of man who'd say, text me or DM me. You know, he talked to us. Me, on the other hand, while he nurtured our community in all the meaningful ways, I was a little preoccupied with the state of his office, his emails, see, there's a theme, his voicemails, the minutia of the day-to-day that comes with working in an office environment, the meaningless trivia that nonetheless punctuated our day-to-day interactions. They're all shaking their head because they know the backstory here. And I want to tell you it was every day. Because Cantor Kurland, and those of you who hung out at the office know this, would pass through our offices every day, and he would say hello to each of us. And as Rabbi Rosenbaum said at the funeral, it made each of us feel noticed and heard and seen and appreciated. And to our sweet Cantor, I was a serious nag. Nobody's denying it. But he and I had a long, entrenched routine. He'd lean into my office just enough to say hi. We got rid of the whole yeah thing years before because I accused him of doing that so he could make a quick escape. So he'd come in and say hi, and then just when he's going into my office, I'd go in for the jugular. And this became an entrenched gag between us. And Carol Maslin of blessed memory would always joke, and she always called him Hassan, would joke that we should, just label our issues A, B, C, D, and then we would just shout C, and we would just avoid all the time what we would spend going over and over again these things. Let me give you an example. You're going to love this. So he'd come in, lean in, and I'd inevitably ask him about, say, an example would say, so are you going to attend said event? He'd say, call Sandy. I'd say, can you just please call her? And he'd then say, kind of inching away, he'd say, can you just call her? And then I'd say, no, just call her. And so he'd leave, he'd go out to the hallway. Remember this? Go out to the hallway. I would kind of creep in a creepy way, follow him to make sure he was calling Sandy. And then I was okay. I left y'all to talk, and I went back to my office, and inevitably, like clockwork, a few minutes later, he'd come in and say, I'll get back to you on that. And this and similar conversations were repeated dozens and dozens of times, and I want to tell you, I never won any of our animated conversations. How do you sustain irritability with someone, and I have to say I'm good at irritability, but how do you sustain that with someone who magically can dust every interaction with kindness and compassion and recognition? He knew everyone's name and who everyone was related to. He was plenty irritated with me over the years, but somehow we had a genuine relationship because of this, not despite it, because Cantor Kurland, in my experience, was a very private person. Our long collaboration and friendship allowed us to speak frankly, talk through our personal lives safely, and more importantly, could share our truths and still be okay and be more than okay with one another. When I told him I was going to retire, and I asked him how he planned on celebrating that the nagging would cease finally, he closed the door and did that little finger thing, and he says, "I'm going to miss you." Brought tears to my eyes for that moment of such generosity and such grace. What I learned with the wisdom that comes with a long life that I've been gifted and living a lot of life is that Cantor Kurland took care of what was important in life, and the filing and the tidying just wasn't it. But his community, all of you, his congregants, especially those in difficult and vulnerable situations, and his family were top priority. His lasting legacy to me is to try to remember people over paper and love over ego, and to answer a person's call with, "Talk to me."
Hello, everybody. I'm Sharon Mossman, and I talked to Sandy earlier this evening and said I was going to sing a song. And Rabbi Rosenbaum stole my thunder, and he sang the song I was going to sing. So I've been a member of this congregation many years, and one of the things that Cantor did was this thing called Nash and Sing. And I knew where these were. And at the last one I attended, I shared a little video of my 100-year-old mother singing Al Kolela. You remember this, Sandy? And Cantor and Sandy said, oh, they walked down the aisle to Al Kolela. So are you okay? I'm going to sing Al Kolela for you. Okay. Al advash v'al ha'oketz, al amar v'hamatok, al bitenu hatinoket shmor eli hatov, al ha'esh hamivoeret, al hamayim hazakim, al ha'ish hashav habaita min hamerchakim, al kol eleh, al kol eleh, shmor na li eli hatov, al hadvash ve'al ha'oketz, al hamar ve'hamatok, al nata'akod natua, al tishkach et hatikva, hashiveni ve'ashuva, el ha'aret ha'tova. Shmor eli al zeh habayit, al hagan chachamor, miagon mipachat petach umimilchamar. Shmor al ma me'at sheshla, al ha'or ve'al ha'tav, al ha'pri shelo hishvilot v'shenesav, al kol eleh, shmor na li eli hatov, al hadvash ve'al ha'oketz, al hamar ve'hamatok, al nata'akod natua, al tishkach et hatikva, hashiveni ve'ashuva, el ha'aretz ha'tova. So once a month, we used to gather and sing songs at this Nash and Sing, which was absolutely wonderful, which I will miss. And I got so excited about it, I contacted Brad and said, I have some songs I'd like to suggest. So he let me pick songs for it, because it was always his songs. He kept asking me to join the choir for the high holidays, and I kept turning him down because I said I want to be part of the congregation, not in the choir. Sorry. Sorry, Barbara, but it wasn't my thing. He was wonderful. I like Israeli folk dancing. Cindy yesterday mentioned that we're dancers, and he danced with us. I'm a singer. I love singing. I don't have his voice, but it's okay. His little shtick with me on Friday nights was, everybody has to say their shtick. So there was a song that Rabbi Rosenbaum, remember? Ma Gadlu, Ma Zechaya. And so whenever we sang that, the second part was the hallelujah part. And I'd be up there, because I can't sit in these chairs because I've had back surgery, so I sit in the hard chairs on top. And at the very end of the song, he'd sing it for me, and he'd tell everybody he was singing it for me. And at the end, he'd end, and I'd go, hallelujah, and that was our thing. Every Friday night, that was our thing. So he was wonderful to everybody. He always would ask me how I was doing, how my mother was. And when I went to visit her and I come back, he'd say, welcome back, Sharon. He knew I went to visit her. He's just an amazing guy. So.
I'm David Pekarsky, and got to know Cantor Kurland well from the morning Minyan, which I began attending many years ago, saying Kaddish for my father-in-law, and it turned into a multi-year experience. Continues today on Zoom. But we were about the same vintage, and both into technology to some degree, but also put a lot of, still relied on paper and pencil. So one thing that I recall that was quite extraordinary is when people came in, and often to the morning Minyan would come someone who had just lost someone, lost a parent, lost a sibling. And maybe they were regular, but often they were not. They were just a person who came and they were here to say Kaddish, and maybe they'd stay for a week, maybe they'd stay for months. But invariably, he had a pad, and he would write the person's name down. He'd write the name of the person who had passed, and he would make sure that kind of detail was never lost. It's like, okay, you're here, you are important. The same would be the case if someone was going on a trip, or someone returned from a trip. Make it a point. And it was not fanfare, he didn't like, it's like, oh, I'm doing this now for you. No, it was just like something he did, and what it did, the impact of it is it built a community in the Minyan. And I think, maybe he was doing it not even consciously, but the effect was wonderful. People knew each other. They knew just enough about each other's lives that there was just an extraordinary continuity, and he was the glue. So please God, we'll be able to continue that on a level that reminds us of him, and also, I'm sure takes some new paths as well. A very extraordinary man, and I think we're all feeling the same way. A lot of sadness, a lot of sorrow, and a lot of gratitude for having him in our lives. You could not know him and be remote from him. It was not possible.
think we've got our last three here. Would you come, actually stand over in the middle so everybody can see you?
Hello, my name is Julie Sandler, and our family, we joined Herzl in the late 80s when I was a really little girl, and I got to know Cantor Kurland in the years that followed, in particular, of course, at the ages of 12 and 13, when I was studying to become a bat mitzvah, and a little bit after when I'd read Torah for Cantor Kurland. And those years for me were tough. I mean, I think when you ask the average person, like, what were some of the happiest years of your life? Very few people respond with, you know what was awesome? Puberty. Like, very few people respond that way. Very few people peak in middle school. And for me, those years were no exception. As my dad knows, you know, I was so sad in those years. I was bullied. I would, like, eat lunch in the bathroom at school. Was just really sad. Outside of, you know, our beautiful home and family life, there were a few places, you know, outside of that world that felt safe or happy for me, with one very clear exception, which was going to study with Cantor Kurland in his office, in his library, on the Bima. He made me feel not only, you know, safe and happy, but also really affirmed. Implicitly in his teachings and his mentorship, in the ritual, he was so confidence building, but even more explicitly in his words. You know, he would tell me, like, you have a life force. You have vim and vigor and an energy and strength. And during those incredibly fragile, tough years, he helped me form a sense of self somehow that not only allowed me to survive and thrive during those tough years, but also was so foundational to the person that I became, to the person that I am today. He was in a small group of people, my family, and also some other faces here, more Ruz, Joanne Glosser, who were part of that village during those years. He was such an influential voice in lifting me up. And that's the word I think of. When I think of Cantor Kurland, I think of the lift. When I picture him in my mind's eye, he's like even lifting the Torah and marching it up that aisle right there. And I have just memories of my family scrambling to find our prayer book so we could rush to him, not just to kiss the Torah, but for that moment of acknowledgement where he'd like make that eye contact with the extra enunciation. It's Chaim He, and you'd feel so good to be in his light and in his warmth. And now, as an adult, I realize to lift up others, you also have to be lifted up yourself. And what's been really special just for me personally over the past few days is hearing about his joyous family life, which I didn't have a snapshot of. That's been really special to hear. And I know so many of us over the past few days have thanked the Kurland family for sharing Cantor Kurland, but I would also just like to add as an inflection to that, thank you for lifting him so that he might lift all of us. I know I'm one of just thousands of people that have come through those doors that have, you know, who will continue to carry the torch of his legacy and his impact. I'm thankful to that. So thank you, Cantor Kurland, and to the Cantor Kurland's family for, thanks for the lift.
My name is Bea, and I made an essay about me and the Cantor. There is no mitzvah too small. Even one kind word can make a difference. I am 9 years old from Mercer Island. My family and I go to Herzl-Ner Tamid Synagogue for Friday night Shabbat services. My favorite time of the week is when I get to sing with my Cantor. He always looks at me during Shabbat, and I especially enjoy when he points to me during Roman Rule. Being Jewish is so much more than going to synagogue. It's also about doing as many mitzvahs as I can. Since I'm 9 years old, I can do a lot of mitzvahs with my family. And so many people do mitzvahs for me. Our Cantor always lets the children go on the bima for Vishamru. On Kids' Night Shabbat, he lets me start Baruch Hu with him. This is a mitzvah because it's an act of kindness of giving children a chance to lead a prayer. He makes us feel welcome by coming over to us and saying Shabbat Shalom at the end of the service. These little mitzvahs have made me feel confident and happy. When our Cantor got really sick, everyone wanted to help. I also wanted to help. I made cards and went with my mom to bring some food. I learned that a mitzvah can be very small, like just bringing paper plates for Passover. We felt more like a community because everyone wanted to pitch in and help. However, they could. This is because he has done so many mitzvahs for everyone. His kindness was like a boomerang. I thought that all these mitzvahs would bring a miracle. I don't even want to say what happened because it's so painful. I didn't understand why he is in heaven singing with the angels instead of singing with us in shul. I feel sad and overwhelmed. I miss him a lot. This means that a mitzvah cannot save someone's life, but it's how we get through sadness together and honor those who have done so much for us. I still think that doing mitzvahs are important because it makes me feel good inside. And I hope it helps others feel cared for. This is one of the hardest experiences of my life, and I don't know how I'm going to get through this and feel happy again, especially in shul. Maybe by doing more mitzvahs, I will find a way to be happy again. And by singing his melodies, I will feel more connected to him always. Dear Cantor Kurland, I love you and I miss you so much. You feel like family to me. Love, Bea.
You get an A++ for what you wrote and for how beautifully you shared it with all of us. He would be very proud of you.
Really beautiful words have been said. Very inspiring. I'm Zev Young. I'm a member of the Mercer Island community. And there's something a little different perhaps than has been said that I want to share. A very special aspect of Cantor. He stood and mentored Achdus, oneness within the Jewish community, caring for every Jew, no matter what their affiliation was. And I'm the last speaker, so I'm going to be short. I want to share a story that I experienced. A few decades ago, time has passed, I came to Mercer Island, and there was a few of us who wanted to start a Orthodox shul on the island. And one of our first challenges was finding a Torah. And as we talked to different congregations, there was various rules and procedures that the different synagogues in the community had. And we were coming to our first Shabbat. And we didn't have a Torah. And I got a hold of Cantor Kurland at the time. He said, come to the shul. I came to the shul. There was almost no questions asked. His wife knew me, but nobody, you know, he didn't ask any questions. He said, he took me, he walked me down to the bima, and he said, here, take this Torah. And he gave me a Torah for our first Minyan on Mercer Island. It was his love for his fellow Jew, his mentoring of Achdus, his caring for one another. It was, when I think about it, it brings tears to my eyes, because, we were new at that time. And what a welcome. It was a Jewish welcome. And I think we need more of that today, of understanding that we're all together and that Achdus is so important. Cantor mentored it in such a beautiful way. Just wanted to share that. And condolences to the family, very special family.
Thanks, everyone, for sharing such beautiful words and memories. Rav Nachman of Bratslav was not only a remarkable man and teacher, he also suffered from clinical depression. And the way in which he treated himself was in studying and teaching Torah, but also in creating some of the most beautiful songs that lifted his spirit and lifted the spirits of others. As we send you off tonight, please join Rabbi Rosenbaum and me as we sing perhaps his most well-known song, Gesher Tzar Ma'od. It is a narrow bridge, but we always have to remember not to be afraid.
A really quick story about this song. Some of you may have seen a video that was circulated a few weeks ago. My wife brought this to my attention. There was, on Yom HaShoah, there was an El Al flight in which the pilot got out of the cockpit, grabbed his guitar on Holocaust Memorial Day, and led the entire plane in singing this song. Kol ha'olam kulo gesher tzar ma'od, the whole world is a narrow bridge, and the most important thing is not to be afraid. And for that to happen on Yom HaShoah, and then he continued and broke into Am Yisrael Chai, and it was amazing to see all the people of the plane getting out of their seats, clapping, with this pilot. Only in Israel would you encounter something like this, and. Of course, who did I most want to share this with was Cantor Kurland. So I visited him in the hospital that day and played it for him, and it was a combination of his love for Israel and his love for music that he really appreciated it. So, and of course, it had a poignant meaning, double meaning on that day. Knowing what he was going through. So. Let's think of him and the family as we sing it together. Kol ha'olam kulo gesher tzar ma'od, gesher tzar ma'od, gesher tzar ma'od. Kol ha'olam kulo gesher tzar ma'od, gesher tzar ma'od. Ve'ha'ikar lo lefached klal, lo ha'ikar ve'ha'ikar lo lefached klal, ve'ha'ikar lo lefached klal, ve'ha'ikar lo lefached klal.
Thank you, friends. Drive safely home. Tomorrow will be the final day of Shiva because of the onset of Shavuot. If you could please, before leaving, replace or bring back to the spot where you either took your Siddur or your copy, and that way we'll have them in place for tomorrow.